Hello, Covenant Keepers. This is Pastor Mike. I want to give you another teaching today, and I'd love to talk about consecration and stewardship. Since we're going into consecration, I want to tie the two together and then talk about the differences between the two. A lot of times people get consecration or the word consecrate mixed up with being a steward, and they are very similar, but they fit hand in hand. But there are some differences here, and I want to do some teaching here that I believe that will be beneficial to you, the covenant keeper. I want to read Genesis chapter 28, verses 20 through 22, where it speaks about Jacob, and then I'm going to move to Acts chapter 9, verse 6, and then Deuteronomy chapter 26, verses 17 and 18. Genesis 28, 20 through 22 says this, and Jacob vowed a vow. He made a vow saying, if God will be with me and keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. And this stone, where he was out in the wilderness, and this stone, which I have set for a pillar, shall be God's house, and of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the tenth unto thee. Here, Jacob was making a promise to God, saying, God, if you take care of me, I'm going to give you a tenth of everything that I own. That was his promise to God. He was making a stewardship commitment. He was locking himself in. He was going to be faithful to the Lord. He was making a covenant relationship with God. Skip to the New Testament in Acts chapter 9, verse 6. And I want you to read it with me. It says, and he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. All right. In other words, he says, Paul, if you're going to follow me and you're going to consecrate your life to me and you're locking in to who I am, go into the city and trust me. I'm going to give you instructions. So you have another illustration of a person who is committing themselves to God and wanting God to bless them. That's kind of like us. Jacob vowed a vow in Genesis chapter 28, verses 20 through 22, that if God would give him bread to eat, clothes to put on his back, and allow him to return to his father's house in peace, then he says, I'm going to give you a tenth of everything. Paul says, Lord, what will you have me to do? God says, get up, go into the city, and I'll tell you what to do. And the scripture says that Paul was trembling and astonished. In other words, he had humbled himself to follow God's command. In Deuteronomy 26, 17 and 18 says this, thou hast avouched the Lord this day to be thou God. In other words, you have made a promise, Moses says, you have made a promise that God will be your God. And then he says, and to walk in his ways and to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments and to hearken unto his voice. And the Lord has avouched thee this day to be his peculiar people. In other words, you're committing yourself to the Lord. He's committing himself to you. You are consecrating, setting yourself apart. That's the word we've been dealing with, unto the Lord for his service. And then he promises to bless you. Now, I want to take it a little step further. In this matter of this relationship with God, in general, all Christians have made a consecration of themselves to God. This consecration covers everything. It's all inclusive. We say, God, I am yours. And so it's like one great all important step in our relationship to God is to say, God, I am yours. I'm committed to you. All right. And so, but where does the stewardship piece come in? Because if one is consecrated to God, doesn't that include everything? Okay, that's what comes to our mind. I'm consecrated, so what is this stewardship thing? Why do I need stewardship? What is the difference between the two? Is not stewardship just another name for consecration? And won't you get the same results? And I'm going to say, no, they're two different things. And this is what I mean. The word consecration is a general term implying your entire surrender to the will of God. That's all it implies, that you are surrendering your will to God's will. And it covers all of your life. But one could consecrate everything about themselves to the Lord without any very clear idea of what that consecration involves. You can be consecrated and still have a very indefinite comprehension of what your duty should be or what your responsibility to be. In other words, I consecrate myself to the Lord, I'm set apart, but am I clear? Am I clear on what my duty is? Am I clear on my full responsibility? Consecration is an act of the soul. It's giving all over to the will of God, whatever it is. And this consecration can be made, and it's often made without full understanding of what the will of God might include. And so there is a difference between saying I'm consecrated and I am a good steward. Yes, I'm a good steward. Two different things. Stewardship is a more definite term. Stewardship involves definite action along the lines of being consecrated. A consecrated person is willing to do the will of God. I'll say it like this. A consecrated person is willing to do the will of God, while a Christian steward, that's the next level, has become aware of their definite responsibilities, and they have accepted the challenge of being a Christian. Two different things. So consecrated person says, I'm yours, Lord. Everything I got, I'm yours. But a Christian steward has become aware and started practicing their responsibilities. A steward has come to an understanding of what the will of God is, especially when it comes to using his or her talents and money. And I'll say it again. A steward has come to an understanding of what the will of God is in reference to their talents and money. Consecration has a definite form. Yes, you should give everything over to the Lord, but then you have to lock in and say, but then how can I be a good steward, a good consecrated person? A consecrated person who is activating their talents and money is called a good steward. Now you see the difference. Now, let's be honest. We're all acquainted with good people who profess to be consecrated to God. Okay? We all know people like that. But we all know these people sometimes do very little in the work of God. And their giving unto the Lord financially, their giving of their gifts and talents is spasmodic at the very least. Sometimes it happens and most of the time it doesn't. Unfortunately, you see these people and the church is too full of these type of people. But I'm so glad that I'm speaking to a group of people who are not in that category. You're not spasmodic in your giving. You're not spasmodic in giving of your tithes, your offering, and your abilities and your talents to the church, because the church is the body of God. And Christ expects our talents to be used for his glory. Christ expects our resources to be used for his glory. After all, he gave it to us, and now we simply yield it back over to him. All right. Is this good? All right. So as a good steward, that's what a covenant keeper is. He's a good steward of everything that God has endowed upon his or her life. And you've decided to take on the responsibilities that Christ has given us, to accept the challenge, to make sure that his household is taken care of. Now, because of this, you can go back to scriptures like Deuteronomy 26, 17 through 18. You walk in his ways, you keep his statutes, his commandments, his judgments, and you hearken to his voice. You've become his peculiar people. Why? Because you are actually taking on the challenge of becoming God's people. You're keeping his statutes. You're doing what he commands. You're not just saying, I'm a Christian, I'm consecrating myself into the Lord, but you have now taken on the duty of what consecration involves. You become aware of the definite responsibilities. All right. Well, this is all I want to say for today. God bless you. And I want you to have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you, covenant keepers, because without you, hey, New Birth Church just would not be the same. We wouldn't be able to do the outreach activities we do. We wouldn't be able to pay our bills. We wouldn't be able to have electricity. Just recently, we had to have some work done on our AC units. Well, because of the covenant keepers, we got it fixed. Yes. I so appreciate you. Take care. Love you. God bless. Bye-bye.